This is Ukraine Media Center on the 2nd of February. I am Svetlana Cheparenko. We'll be talking about the approval by the European Union of the support fund for Ukraine. We are talking to Vsevolod Chentsov, the head of the mission of Ukraine to the European Union. Welcome, sir. So, 50 billion euro package of aid, how it is going to work, what are the terms and timelines for delivery, and what this money will be targeted for. All these questions will be answered very shortly. But it is important that yesterday a political decision was made. All the bodies, including the European Commission, European Parliament, and European Council, will be concluding the so-called trialogue that was initiated quite recently. It is expected that the next week will see the lawmakers' proposition to be approved finally. And the Council, which is the highest body of the Union, will approve it in a certain format. It is important that the political decision has been approved. The European Parliament, as we expect it to do, will vote in favor of this instrument, of this facility, not in the upcoming session that will take place next week, but rather the next session after this one, which is to say by the end of this month. This will open an opportunity to begin the use of this facility. It is important for us to make sure that the facility starts working where we are looking into the support of the macro financing of Ukraine's economies. The way we see it, in March we will receive the first tranche of this facility. We are doing our best to make sure that the first tranche is larger than what has so far been standard tranches in this, within the framework of this facility, as a previous macro-financial support is somewhere at the level of 1.5 billion. But this is a new facility. We want this one to be bigger, to cover all the current expenditures and to cover the budget deficit that we see at the beginning of the year. This is a typical process when you don't have that much revenue at the beginning of the year, but now that we are in the situation of war, the general environment is worse. So it's important that this facility starts working. Our expectations are for the delivery of this instrument. Now, the whole facility has been approved, and there are some specifics to it, how the money is being distributed. That has to be green-lighted yet. But there are three major pillars, including macro financial stability that I have mentioned. Second part, the so-called investment pillar. And the third one is a technical aid. To be sure, the major part of that money will go for the support of the macro-financial stability. Investment pillar is approximately, for the whole period, somewhere at the level of 8 billion, and the technical aid is much smaller. That does not mean that all the needs of Ukraine will be covered through this investment pillar. Rather, this is seen as a beginning of the reforms in these key areas of economy that will promote the Ukrainian reforms and recovery of the country, the green transition, the support of new technologies, etc. In a nutshell, this is the structure of the facility. You have raised an issue that I wanted to talk about, 50 billion euro. include the green technologies, but what are the priorities in the implementation of this process? The implementation of the facility is tightly connected to the plan of the recovery of Ukraine. This plan has been developed by the government in close cooperation with the European Commission. It will be approved in the nearest future. It is supposed that this will be approved with all the legal procedures included. This will be a comprehensive reform plan that basically is preconditioned on the demands and conditions by the European Union, by the European Commission, including the demands in the context of our accession to the European Union. And of course, it includes the negotiation process. Basically, all these negotiations that we are talking about and hearing from the mass media and the expert community, all these 35 chapters, to a smaller or larger degree, will be covered by the facility. The economy of recovery, of course, will be divided into sectoral components. Can we say that this steadfast EU support is an important signal for the Ukrainian cause on our way to the European Union? Of course, this is a facility that is a financial and economic basis for these reforms. They are strictly tied to the whole process, as I have already mentioned. This is a very positive signal for our partners beyond the European Union. It was yesterday, right after the approval, the President of the European Commission, von der Leyen, had a talk with US President Biden. We know about the wranglings in the American political lives. This is a very good signal for our allies across the ocean. So yesterday's decision is a meaningful one, not only for our bilateral relations with the European Union. Is there a risk yet that during the next review, other European countries apart from Hungary will be able to block the decision or prevent it from being effected? If you know the text, it tells you that the European Commission will inform the Council on the progress of the disbursement of this facility. We don't think that this will affect and impact the final decision. It is important that there is a proviso that, if need be, a review of the multi-year financial prospect will take place in 2 years' time. What does that mean? It means that it has to do not only with our part of the facility, it also concerns the other components of the future prospects, the money that will be allocated for the issues of migration issues and others instruments that were approved yesterday as well. It does not necessarily mean that such a review will decrease the money delivered to Ukraine. It's a smart decision because it can be adapted according to our needs. As we see it now, the facility will grow rather than decrease. Answering your question, I haven't seen in yesterday's decision any possibility for any member state to continue to keep Ukraine on the tenterhooks in a year or two. What are the prospects for setting up a special fund for military needs of Ukraine? This is a question that was discussed yesterday too. So far, we haven't locked in any special funds that the member states had agreed to put into the special fund, but the consensus is there that the special fund for military aid will be there. Why is it? The European so far has been delivering military aid to Ukraine through other funds. There was not a special fund. When the fund was launched back in 2021, it amounted to 5.7 billion, and these were off the budget money that were filled in by specific member states. Since the unprovoked full military invasion, this money has been reserved for Ukraine. The member states have announced that they will pledge more resources than the fund foresaw. Additionally, there was an agreement on additional 2 billion euros. That's why the European Commission, including Mr. Borrell, who is the High Representative of the Security and Foreign Affairs, he's also a Vice President of the European Commission, he has come up with an idea to set up a special fund in an answer to today's needs. This fund will have to be filled with about 5 billion euro. The logic is still there. What is the subject of today's discussions? Germany has initiated these rounds of negotiations to make sure that the bilateral aid delivered by the EU members to Ukraine will take on board and also include different other contributions, either partly or in general. Yesterday's negotiations showed that they are coming closer to a unanimous understanding. What is other difference? Until recently, member states could deliver rounds of ammunition to Ukraine that they had in their storehouses. Basically, these were weapons of the Soviet era. These resources have been depleted. We have basically started a new cycle where we need the ammunition and weaponry to be produced for Ukraine. It requires cash, it requires investment, so there is a need for a new instrument. Apart from the financial issues, a newly appointed French minister mentioned some instrument that the European Commission will be developing that will be targeting a number of the Ukrainian kinds of produce. Do you think that Ukraine can impact in any way such a decision by the European Commission? Of course, Ukraine is a key component of the European agricultural produce. Apart from the war, our agrarians are showing good results. And of course, we are delivering some kind of pressure upon the European producers. In an answer to your question whether we have an impact, of course, the government and the ministries, through their channels of contacts, work towards the European understanding of our position. Why is it that Ukraine is not only a competitor, we're also a serious contributor to the European security? We manufacture high-quality produce that costs less than analogous produce in Europe, including sugar and poultry. Yes, farmers are not happy that we are narrowing their capabilities to sell their produce. But if we look in a broader context in terms of the consumer interests, the interests of other industries of the European economy that use these produces, if they are interested in this cooperation, what will be the safety devices? The European Commission has already developed some instruments and are In case the European Commission approves of that, this is only the first stage, including the financial issue that we have just been discussing. This is to say that if this instrument, again, works in a way that it has been seen by the Commission, it will mean that we will be able to export as much produce as is compared to the volume of 2022 and 23. In case we overdraft these levels, the European Commission will come up with a recommendation for the European Union to restrict such surplus levels of exports, but so far it is on a good way to be implemented. Questions from our journalists. Nadia Yurchenko from Ukrinform. 2 points. 50 billion euros that were granted yesterday. There are some preconditions, including the control mechanisms. Were these the mechanisms that were foreseen at the first stage, or was it a demand from Hungary? From the very first day, the overseeing mechanisms were there, and there are a couple of stages, including auditing, a standard procedure for such facilities, in spite of the fact that this is a fresh instrument. It's a joint work by the European Union bodies and our supervision committees, including the Parliament. We are developing a plan for economic reforms of the Ukrainian economy. It will be targeting some indicators, and the Europeans will see whether these indicators correspond and comply with the vision. And there is another point, a reporting. The reporting will be there on an annual basis, and if case need be, there will be a review in 2 years' time. That is somewhere in the middle of the implementation of the facility. As for the Ukrainian Fund for Peace, how many countries believe that this is a common position? That is to say that there is a possibility that we will not receive the money that we so desperately need. Apart from Germany, there are countries that share this view. Today, Germany promotes such idea. But to reiterate, everyone understands that there must be a balance found, because both in the EU budget as well as in when we talk about the off-the-budget monies, the logic is that the states that can pay more would do these things, and the EU members that need to be financially supported will also be able to use it. At the same time, to use their manufacturing capabilities to help Ukraine as best as they can. What we are talking about is that to preserve national interests of every particular country, but at the same time to make sure that the result is achieved. That is to effectively aid Ukraine as fast as they can. Thank you very much. We've been talking to Vsevolod Chentsov, the head of the mission of Ukraine to the European Union, on the approval of the aid package to Ukraine by EU. Ukraine Media Center will resume work and our operations next Monday. Stay tuned.